If you ever really wanted to know how to sing, listen to the following diuk that was made by Rav Schwab Zatzal on this coming week's Parshas B'Shalach. Rav Schwab points out that there are two different shiros that are commented upon by the psukim. There is the more well-known Oz Yashir of Moshe Rabbeinu, echoed by Klal Yisrael in response to his shira sung after the splitting of the sea. And then there is the shira that is recited by Miriam, also echoed in response by the women accompanying her. Rav Schwab points out that the first shira of the men is concluded in the psukim, and then there's introduced a pasuk that serves almost as a mechitza, as a barrier between the shira by the men, the singing by the men, and the singing by the women. Kivosus paro b'rechbo v'forashav bayom. It was only, as Rashi explains in Gittin, it was only after the chariot of Paro and the horse upon which he rode entered the sea, Vayashev Adonai aleim esmei hayom, and then when they were engulfed by the waters of the sea, Uvinei Yisrael holchu vayabashav b'soch hayom, and the people of Klal Yisrael were walking in that sea, that Miriam Hanaviyah took her instrument in hand and began singing, responded to by the other women. Says Rav Schwab Zatzal, isn't it interesting to note that the men sang the Oz Yashir only specifically after the bodies were spewed forth from the Red Sea itself, enabling them to understand that no longer would the Egyptian army or the Egyptian people present themselves as a threat to the destiny and welfare and well-being of Klal Yisrael. Only after the people were able to see Vayar Yisrael es Mitzrayim Meisvas Asfas Hayom, only after Klal Yisrael were able to see that they would be able to exit the Yam Suf safely without the charging, rampaging army of Egypt swiftly following behind, did Moshe Rabbeinu, Oz Yashir Moshe, did Moshe Rabbeinu see fit to sing, and Klal Yisrael, the men, responded in turn. But, however, says Rav Schwab, the women didn't have to see the bodies of the Egyptians spewed forth from the sea in order to feel secure within the caring and comforting hands of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But rather, the moment that they saw the horse and the chariot of Paro and his men enter the sea, and then the waters of the walls spill upon them, they were able to sing. Miriam, see how the men upon the horses were bobbing up and down at sea, not having to wait till the bodies themselves would be exited upon the seabed. Says Rav Schwab Zatzal, that's because the women were able to see the Yeshua of HaKadosh Baruch Hu and to feel their readiness to sing even before the men. Says the Gemara in Sota, it was specifically due to the religiosity, to the amunah, to the understanding, and to the wellspring of belief that the women of that generation of the Dordeya had in Hashem Yisparach, that the men were able to piggyback upon that amunah and be rescued ultimately in salvation and redemption by HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And indeed, the Gemara Nida tells us, Bina Yisera, that there is an added component of comprehension and intuition afforded women by HaKadosh Baruch Hu that men don't have, enabling them at times to understand what's going on or to envision something even before it actually occurs. How do you really sing? When you look at what's presented in front of your face and you don't worry about what will occur thereafter, but you look at what's presented to you and you ask yourself, do you have reason to rejoice and be happy? Do you have reason to thank HaKadosh Baruch Hu? And if you do, well then the notes and the tunes spring forth from the well springs of one's heart, and you're able to sing the greatest songs ever recorded in history. Have a wonderful Shabbos.